tonight we're going to have two presentations, so we'll go through that. My name is Anthony Deneen, and I'm a dry stock advisor based here in Macroom. Tonight's webinar will include two presentations, and then we'll have a question and answer session after the two presentations. The webinar is going to last about an hour. So look, it's a bad night, so sit back, relax, and hope you enjoy the webinar tonight. To introduce our two speakers, I suppose we have two speakers. Firstly, we have John Crowley, who's a dry stock advisor based in Clonakilty. John will give us a presentation on spring grassland management. I suppose we're after a good spell recently, but we had a bad spell earlier on, and we're now having a bad one again. So look, we look forward to how John deals with spring grazing management. And secondly, we'll have a presentation from Chris Daly from ICBF. A lot of you will know. Chris will go through us breeding considerations for the spring of 2021. Each of the presentations will last about 20 minutes each. And again, after the two presentations, we'll have a question and answer session. Just to remind you that down the bottom of your screen, there's a question and answer tab there at the bottom of your screen. And look, any questions you have, maybe type them in there during the presentations, and we'll get to them at the end. I suppose the webinar tonight, just to remind you, is being recorded and will be available on West Cork social media channels after tomorrow. So again, look, without further ado, I suppose, look, sit back and we'll ask John maybe there would he put his presentation sharing there and to go through spring grassland management. Okay, John.
Okay, good evening, everyone. All right, just a second, I'll just start sharing my screen here now. Sorry, just a second now. So just move this move the star this way. Share screen. And so just start here now. Sorry for the delay here now, folks. One of the technology. And screen 1, 2, share. No, can you see that?
That's very good, John.
Yeah, you seen the full screen, the full presentation, the slide there. That's grand. Okay. Okay, so good evening, everyone. My name is John Crowley. I'm based there in Clonakilty, and tonight I'm going to talk to you there about spring grazing management. Look, it's been a very difficult spring this year. Okay. In the fact that February has been so wet, it's probably one of the wettest Februaries we had in a long, long time. And but look, it's pushed everything back. So what I'll do is I'll just cover a little bit about how do we cope now between now and what should we do. Okay. So first thing of all is why should we get them out to grass? Okay. Well, first and foremost, anyway, grass is our cheapest feed first of all, and it is our own competitive advantage. The fact is the cheapest by far. Like grass per kilo of dry matter costs only 7 cents. You know. Whereas if you compare it to silage is 16 cents, which is more than double the cost of grass, okay? And the most expensive of all then on a dry matter basis is ration, meals, which is 26 cents per kilo dry matter, okay? So that's the first advantage of the grass, okay? Secondly, you have much higher animal performance, okay? And you have higher performance. That number one, you have a lower feed costs and 3 times cheaper than meal, and it's 2 times cheaper than silage, okay? And the third thing then is also by getting them out early, you're going to reduce your housing period. So you're going to the quicker they're out to grass, the less time they have to spend inside in the housing. Okay, so for every additional day that they're out in grass, it's worth €2 per livestock unit. You know, so just to bear that in mind, like that's how much of a saving you are by getting them out to grass early. Then what are the climatic effects of getting early spring grazing? Well, the first thing, you're going to have reduced greenhouse gases, okay, and reduce ammonia emissions as well, okay. 75% of our ammonia emissions nationally is coming from slurry, right? From slurry spreading and storage and on concrete, and 98% of all the ammonia emissions that's in the country is actually coming from agriculture. So 98% of ammonia emissions actually coming from agriculture, and of that, 75% of that is coming from the slurry spreading and the storage. Okay. So what do we do? So how are we going to get the most from the spring grass? Well, first, there's 4 things we have to get done. We have to get an early spring nitrogen plan. We'll cover a little bit of that there tonight. A slurry application plan. We covered that as well. A spring grazing plan. We do that, but the spring rotation planner. And how do we graze then if conditions get difficult? Which tonight is a pure example, and yesterday. So the next few days, how we're going to manage over the next few days. Okay. So if you bear this spring now at the moment, like the grass is going to be, a lot of the paddocks are going to be closed since last October. Okay, so you're going to average covers, you can get covers on average about 1,000 kilograms dry matter per hectare, which in terms of height of grass is between 8 to 10 centimeters, about 4 to 5 inches, right? But that's an average, right? There's going to be a huge range between the paddocks. Some of them are going to be very low, okay, because they're probably the last paddocks that you closed, okay, they're about 500. But some are going to be very high. It could be hitting up to 2,000 kilograms of dry matter per hectare. And they're the paddocks you probably first close. So it's important to decide which of the ones you're going to graze first. Like last week, the average farm cover nationally was 925 kilograms of dry matter per hectare. So that was what it was last week, okay? So it's going to be much the same, it's probably a little bit higher actually later on. So the next thing is, when can we turn it out? Well, obviously, I'll always say people whenever conditions allow, but it's going to depend on, number one, the weather conditions. Like last week, the last 10 days were fabulous conditions to get the cattle out. You know, the ground conditions are ideal, but it's also going to affect what type of soil as well too. Like around where I am in Clonenbandon, you're going to get that a little bit earlier, but maybe further west along that, where the heavier soil types, it might have to let them out later. Okay. The other thing is that your flexibility, that's how flexible you are. And by means of flexibility, do you have paddocks and do you have roadways, okay, which is a great aid to have for spring grazing. And also the other thing you also have to do is your own mindset, and you have the time to do this as well. But bear in mind, you're saving yourself workload inside in the yard, you know. You're not feeding cattle inside in the yard. The cattle are feeding themselves, you know, if you look into that. So what are our aims of an early spring turnout? Okay, so the first thing anyway, the main reason we want to get them out is we have to get grass back into the diet of the cows and the cattle. Okay, because as I said earlier, grass is our cheapest feed. So we want to get it into them as quick as possible. The other thing, advantages by getting grass early into the system, is that grass is a way higher, spring grazed grass is a way higher DMD compared to pit size. The best pit size you're going to have is about 72% DMD, or 75. But early spring grass is up around 80, 85. So there's a huge difference in that, okay? The next aim we want to do is we want to graze off the grass that has grown over the winter. Okay, that's been closed there since last, because in order for the grass to grow, we have to clean that grass off first. Okay, so it has to be cleaned off. Okay, we don't want to run out of grass. And have to rehouse stock. So this is where your spring rotation planning comes in, to have a plan. Okay, and by grazing it out, we also want to make sure that we're going to have enough regrowth grass for all the cattle to eat in early to mid-April. Okay, and early to mid-April, there's a day there called Magic Day, and that's normally when grass growth is equal to the demand of the cattle. Okay, so that's the main reason of having early spring turnout. So one of the advantages, what could happen is that we could actually have a lot of this dead material, you know. So we want to try and clean that off. Okay, sorry, just a second now. So like we want to try and graze off the grass as much as possible, because you see, if we don't graze it off, you're going to have a build-up of dead material like this, and the cattle are going to be very slow to eat it, and also it's way lower in dry matter compared to your live grass, obviously. You know, it could be up to only down to about 65-70% DMD. So we want to try and reduce the incidence as much as possible. Okay, so that's just why we're important to graze out our grass early, graze it out, clean off our pastures. So our spring rotation planner, like this year, it has to be changed this year, because normally in a normal year we'd have the cattle out, could be around here around mid-February, the first lot of them out, mid to end of February. But the problem now is that the spring has gone so late, February being soon, we have to adjust our planner. So basically what we're saying at the moment is we want to aim to have 1/3 of our grazing area grazed by Patrick's Day. Okay. Then we want to graze the next 1/3 grazed by the 31st of March. Okay. And the last 1/3 grazed by the 15th of April, okay? Because it's just the way the spring has gone so late this year, okay? So how do we plan it? Okay, how do we do it? Right, so let's say, for example, we have a 40 hectare farm or 100 acre farm, okay? All in grass, right? So and we say the cattle are left out in the 1st of March, which is the first of the dry weather. So between the 1st of March and the 15th of April, we have 45 days to graze the whole farm. So how are we going to do it? Okay, so the first thing, so if we let them out on the 3rd and 1st of March, okay, what we want then basically is we want to have the first third grazed, of the farm grazed by the 17th of March, or Patrick's Day, okay. Then the second third of it then grazed by the 31st of March, okay. And the final third then grazed by the 15th of April. And this is the 15 minutes where we aim to start our second rotation, okay. So it is important there so if we could try and get that done, it would help us big time, like, you know, and to definitely help our spring or our grass regrowth big time, because we want to clean up previous pastures, last year's pastures. What happens if our plan is worked out? Now, there could be two reasons. We could be grazing the area too fast, or we could be grazing the area too slow. So if we're grazing the area too fast, how can we correct it? Okay. Well, the first thing we would do is that don't turn out any more stock, okay? Maybe feed some round bales outside to slow it down, okay? And then only graze by day, then maybe could possibly to feed some stock indoors at night, you know? And if they are grazing too fast, you might have to rehouse them. Another option then is to say, if we had a 40 hectare farm and we're grazing the 1/3, we had a target, we said that we graze about 15 acres a week. Or 10 acres a week, okay, 15 acres a week. If we're going too slow, what we could do is we could turn the cattle out on the lighter covers, so at least they could speed it up and bring up the time, right? But if we're grazing the area too slow, then we can turn them out on the lighter covers there, and that will speed things up there, okay? But if they were grazing too fast, I should mean to say that we put them out on the heavier covers, and that will slow them down, okay? But if they're grazing the area too slow, then maybe turn them out on take them out of the heavier covers and move them to the lighter covers, so that they'll speed it up and graze the area, cover more ground, okay? And then we can actually catch up to our plan then, okay? So turn the stock out earlier than planned is one area, okay? And as I said, graze the lighter covers first if you graze the stuff, and then turn them out in the heavier covers. Okay, so where does the fertilizer and where does the slurry fit in? So let's say if we have a mixture of medium, heavy and lighter covers, and we have some, we need to get some slurry out. Well, what we do is, the best thing to do, if we're going to get slurry, put the slurry out on the light covers first and then graze them, okay? If we really rush to get the slurry out. If you have heavy covers, the best thing to do with them basically is to graze them first if you can at all, and then go out with the slurry, right? And any medium covers, then maybe go out with your fertilizer, okay? Go out with your fertilizer first and then graze them there. So that's where you can actually fit with all three, right? So what type of fertilizer program can we have? No. So let's say if you're stocked at 130, if your stock rate is 130 kilos per hectare, right? And if your P's and K's are 1 or index 1, so if your P's and K's are low, this is a suggested fertilizer. So let's say the first thing you do is go out with 23 units of nitrogen to the acre in March, okay? With your half a bag of urea to the acre, okay? And then from April on, then you start putting out your P's and K's, okay? Because P's and K's actually is the best to put out from April onwards, okay? And actually to build up, and that's when the soil will absorb left. So if you out maybe a bag of 18612 in April, and a bag again in May, okay, and again in June, and then it's when you have June and July, and then when you're finally finishing in September, maybe just go out with maybe about 2 bags of can there to the acre, or a bag and a half can to the acre there. Okay, so that's a suggested. But fertilizer now is to probably get out some nitrogen. Like the past week was ideal there to get it out at half a bag of urea to the acre, you know, which is brilliant for it. Like, okay. So now we've a problem here now. We've wet weather here at the moment. So what are our strategies? Well, we have to get flexible. So if there's wet weather covering, we might get them to graze the lighter covers first, skip the heavier covers, and then try and turn out in dry weather. Obviously, well, we had the dry weather, but now we have a spell of wet weather now for the next couple of days. So how do we manage that? Well, this is where we have to be inventive. We have to start being more flexible. We have to start maybe using big strip grazing, okay? And this is basically using the posts and reels there, okay? Also involve getting a back fence, have a back fence so that when they graze over, that you fence it off, that they don't go back and graze walk in the area that's already grazed and damage it even more. On-off grazing is another suggestion you could do. You could actually take the cattle off and maybe house them maybe during particularly like for tonight, no, maybe and maybe tomorrow, and then let them out again probably Friday, because I think the weather's supposed to settle down, I think, from the weekend on, okay? If you have paddocks there, if you had multiple gaps, it gives you great flexibility that you can put them in one part of the paddock and let them out in another part, so they're not doing less damage as possible to the paddock. And another great aid is also to have temporary water trucks as well, you know, so that you can move them around. So if we're looking at, so here's our post and wire, and you can see they're strip grazing the paddock, and then when they're finished, they'll be left into that area, and then that's will be fenced off in the back fence, okay. And here's where we have the advantage of the flex of the water trucks. You can see there, the plastic water trucks, they're a great job. You can move them around. You can move them around, and so that they're not poaching and they're not damaging the grass if the truck was staying in the one area the whole time. Okay, particularly at this time of the year. Okay, so what are our ideal pre-grazing heights? Well, ideally what we like to be grazing is that they're going into a cover is about 12 to 1600, which means the height is about, the grass is about 9 to 10 centimeters high, or 4 inches, 3.5 to 4, about 4 inches high. Okay. Problem with, if we're going to heavier covers, the problem with them is we're going to have more stem, okay, and less leaf. And the leaf is actually the most productive part of the grass and the most digestible part of the grass, and that's what the grass, and this gives the cattle more growth, okay. Another problem we have if we're trying to clean with heavier covers, it's difficult to clean them out, okay. And if we don't clean them out, if you're getting big covers, right, what you're going to have, if we don't clean them out properly, the problem is you're going to have less tillering, okay, and for the grass to send out little shoots and that, and you're going to have more seed heads, and the seed heads are the less productive part of the grass, like the less digestible part of the grass, okay. So that's why it's important to try and clean out as best we can the covers as we can, like, okay. So let's say, for example, if we have, just as an example, we have two groups here. We have one cattle here. They're in a paddock there that was cleaned out well, all right, and versus the cattle here, there was in the paddock there that wasn't cleaned out properly, okay. So if we look at the cattle there that wasn't cleaned out properly, that didn't clean out properly, okay. So basically, you have two chances to graze out the covers, right? To clean out, you have two chances nearly for the whole year to graze it out and to correct it out. The first is actually during the spring rotation, during your spring rotation, which is now, between now and the 15th of April. And your second chance, and possibly your last chance, is on your second rotation. And if you don't clean out the grass properly, okay, or clean out as down to 3.5 centimeters or whatever, clean out properly, what's going to happen is your grasses are going to end up like this. You're going to end up like having hay in May, where the grass is going to be a lot of stem, a lot of seed heads, okay? The grass growth is going to suffer, and as a result of that, the animal performance is going to suffer because you have more seed heads than grass, okay? For the rest, and it's going to basically be doing catch up then for the rest of the year. You're going to go in with the mower and go in, take out bales, and sure, there's a lot of bales around the country after last year, and it's the last thing you probably want is more bales, okay? Now, whereas you look at these cattle here now, this group here, they were in the paddock there. They were in a paddock there where the grass was cleaned up properly, okay? And that now, when it was cleaned out properly, when it's grazed down to the 3.5 centimeters, what you have here is that you're going to have more leafier grass, okay? As well as that, it's going to be more productive because the grass is able to tell when to cleaned out, okay? And as well as that too, but the fact that the sward is cleaned out so well, the sunlight is able to get into the sward and the bottom of the sward, and this is going to encourage the clover to grow. Okay, so not only you're going to have leafier grass, okay, you're also going to have clover, which means you're going to have better animal weight gains and better animal performance on that grass. Okay, and you're going to have a much easier to try and easier to manage that grass than for the rest of the year. Okay, but for the rest of the summer particularly, anyway, you know. So what is our ideal post-grazing height for the height of grass? So ideally we should graze about 3.5 centimeters in the first rotation, and aimed in for 4 to 5 centimeters high in the subsequent grazing, right? The reason why when you graze that tight is that you're getting the grass to cover the tillers, and as the tillers, you're getting more green leaves, and the green leaves are going to last longer. And there's also that perennial ryegrass, which is the most productive of all the grasses. It competes better when it's grazed out tight, so to outcompete the poor grasses. Whereas if it wasn't, if we're not grazed it tight enough, the problem is just we're going to have the poor grasses are going to outcompete the perennial when it's not kept tight. Okay, so this is what 3.5 centimeters now looks like. So basically, you're talking about, if we look at it closely, it's about the height up to the sole of the Wellington. Okay, so this is what you're aiming for to try and graze in the first rotation. But as you can see there that the sunlight is able to get in there now. You can see the clover start to make a start, and the stem is gone, and you're going to have much leafier grass. So what are the benefits and the risks in relation to getting out early spring grazing? Well, so for example, if we had a 40-hectare farm or 100 acres with 40 cows with our calves and 35 yearlings, right? If we were going to keep them inside for the month, so the cows are going to eat over a month each, are going to about 1.6 tons of silage per month, okay? Multiplied by, so that's 64 tons of silage that they'll eat, right? The 35 yearlings will eat about half a ton of silage, which is 17.5 ton. So, and we cost the silage, so the total ton of silage they're going to eat is about 81.5 tons, which is about, and if we cost that at maybe €25 a ton, your total silage cost is going to be €2,038. Plus, maybe if your silage mightn't be up to scratch, a lot of the silage might be only about 65% DMD, you might have to feed meals. Okay, so if they were getting 2 kilos per head per day, you're talking about 35 yearlings, you could be feeding about 2.1 tons. And if we cost the ration at €250 a ton, that means it's going to cost you €525. So if we add the two, they got the total feed costs on it, just feed costs on its own is €2,563. So it is well worth taking a chance. Okay. So if we look at it again more closely, we look at the benefits versus the risks. Okay. Number one is the first thing we're going to save in feed costs. We're not going to feed silage. We're not going to be feeding meals when they're out in the grass. The second thing, that when they're out in the grass, the cattle are going to put on extra live weight, especially the yearlings. Okay, like the best a yearling will do inside the slaughter house, the very best is 0.6 of a kilo per head per day. Whereas when they're out on grass, they could getting a kilo. So an extra 0.4 of a kilo, if we value a €2 kilo, that's worth €840. Okay, for the yearlings. The cows, then the suckler cows, they're feeding the calves, they're going to have extra milk, which means that their calves you're eventually going to have heavier wheeling. So if they got an extra 15 kilos, and if there's 35 of them, at €2 kilo, that's an extra €1,050. Okay? And the other thing then is that you're going to have, by getting them out here, you're going to have better quality grass for May and June. So that's worth €13 per ton of dry matter used. Okay? And let's say if we get an extra 2 ton per hectare of extra grass, because when you graze out, we can get an extra 2 ton per hectare, right? So if we multiply 2 by 13, that's €26, right? And then 26 multiplied by 40 is equal to €1,040. That's what this actually worth. They have the extra grass. So the total benefits of that is worth €5,493. Now, what are the risks? Okay, well, the first risk, the first thing we have to spread in the urea. So if we got out half a bag of urea, if we cost it €340 per ton, that's going to cost us €425. Okay. The next risk we're going to have then is the poaching, which tonight is a pure case. Okay. So poaching, it can cause a reduction basically of up to 20% in your subsequent gas production. All right. And if we have a reduction of 1 ton per dry matter per hectare, it cost you about €260 per hectare. If we replace it with feeds, if we cost it, okay? So let's say, for example, if 10% of our farm is poached, okay? So we have a 40-hectare farm, okay? And 10% of that is poached, okay? That's 10% of 40 is 4 hectares. And 4 multiplied by 260 is equal to €1,040. That's what the 10% poaching could end up costing us. Plus also we might have extra labour in terms of moving it around and moving fences. But when you add up the total risk is actually only about €1,465. So like there's a big difference between 1465 and 5493. Okay. So what are our take-home messages? So the first thing is be prepared for it. Okay. More importantly, make a plan. Okay. So like for tonight, now for example, be able to move the cattle around, or maybe have them. But the most important thing, by having a plan, you also have to be flexible. Okay. So that's the end of my presentation tonight. So I just thank you for your attendance. And look, if you have any questions, we'll take them there at the very end after Chris's presentation there. Okay, thank you.
Perfect, John. Thanks very much for your presentation. And look, you can stop sharing that, and maybe Chris, you might be getting ready your presentation.
Stop sharing there now.
There was a lot of food for thought there, John. There's a lot of good ideas and a lot of good information. And look, as John said there, look, you probably will have plenty of queries and questions. So look, down the bottom of your screens, there's a Q&A tab there. Type in your questions, and we'll put them questions to John after Chris's presentation, and we'll take all the questions at the end. So Chris, maybe you might get you were up there sharing. So Chris, I'll let you drive on with your presentation. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, okay. Can you hear me there, Anthony? Yeah.
Perfect. Nice. John. And just your presentation up.
Yeah, 1 second. I must just switch on the camera there first.
No problem.
Yeah, share the screen.
Yeah, that's it.
All right, are we good to go?
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
Great. Thanks, Anthony. Good evening, everyone. So, as Anthony said, Chris Daly is my name, and I work with ICBF. And I'm just going to go through a few topics there this evening, mainly around breeding considerations for the springtime 2021. I suppose springtime, a lot of herds, majority of suckler herds are spring calving. So from probably, the start of April on, a lot of farmers are going to be considering decisions around breeding, whether that be maybe buying a new stock bull or looking at AI bulls to use, or maybe bringing in some replacement heifers. So just going to go through a few bits there on I suppose, using the indexes to the best of our abilities to help us to make more profitable decisions, I suppose. Okay. So just a few things I'm going to go through briefly on the schemes. So a lot of you will be in the genomics program and the beep weighing program. So I'll just give a brief update on the two of those. Go through the Eurostar indexes, just to make up of them and how to understand them, and just a few considerations in for the spring, just a few easy steps to apply them to your herd and to help you make better decisions. Okay. So look, just in terms of the genomics program, so the original 6 years of the program is now finished, which ran from 2015 to 2020. The department did confirm a rollover, so a lot of you will have applied for that rollover, and there was letters issued in the last week, just letting herds know whether they were accepted or not into the program. ICBF, look, we've gone about ordering the first batches of tags, so they'll be arriving on the first farms from next week on. Now, every herd isn't going to get tags next week. The ones that we were able to order for first will. Some of the herds don't have enough animals at this stage, so we just have to wait until calves are born and that. But we are getting tags out to herds as quickly as we can. Just some of the important dates for this year's program. Look, in the rollover, all of the criteria apply this year. So on the 30th of June, you have to have an eligible stock bull. And an eligible stock bull is one that's genotype 4 and 5 stars. Now that's only applicable to herds using stock bulls, okay? So if you're 100% AI, you don't need to worry about a stock bull. October 2021 is applicable to all herds. So that's the same as last year. There's no increase. Some people thought that maybe in the rollover year, the 50% was going to be increased to maybe 60%, but no, you just have to maintain the 50% eligible females. And they must be born by the 30th of June 2020, because if they're born after that, they won't be 16 months on the 31st of October 21. Okay, so just be mindful of that. And look, if you're using AI, at least 80% of the AI bulls have to be 4 and 5 star AI bulls. Look, that's quite an easy one to use, because the vast majority of AI bulls are 4 and 5 stars on either the terminal or the replacement index. Again, that's only applicable to herds that are using AI. It's if you're stock bull, you don't have to worry about that one. Just in terms of beep and the weighing, It hasn't been launched yet, but it's expected to be launched by the department in the next couple of days. Look, the requirements are the same. So the weighing is compulsory. And then you have the optional extras of either meal feeding or vaccination and the fecal leg sampling. So those two options, those two additional ones, they're optional. You can do them if you want. The relevant calves are those born from the 1st of July 2020 to the 30th of June 2021. So again, we're weighing the cow and the calf on the same day. And look, this is an important one. So if we can try and weigh the animals, weigh the calves when they're aged between 150 and 250 days. So when they're between 5 and 8 months. Now that's not compulsory. So you can weigh the calf at any time from birth to weaning. But the most beneficial time to weigh the animal, both for you as a farmer in terms of the management, but also in terms of the usefulness of the data to ICBF, a weight between 5 and 8 months is the most useful weight. Okay, so if we can try and weigh our animals then, you know, it would be the best for you, both you the farmer and for ICBF. So like autumn 2020 calves, particularly early autumn calvers, so calves that were born last July, August and September can actually be weighed now. October, November, December calves could be weighed in maybe May, June time, and spring calves then can be weighed out in, you know, August, September, October time. Like if you have July, August born calves from 2020, there's no like weighing them when they're maybe yearlings. They're gone off the cow at that stage, so that weight isn't going to tell you a whole lot about the milking ability of the cow, and that's the primary reason that we're collecting weights through beef. Another thing as well for anybody that's in dairy beef, so buying dairy calves, there will be a dairy beef element to the beef this year, whereby farmers can claim, I think, up to €400 for submitting weights on dairy beef calves. But that information will be announced by the department, and I'm sure it'll be covered in the farming media as well. Just a little bit of analysis, and this was done by Teagasc. So Alan Toomey, who works out of Moore Park, he's a PhD student with Teagasc. He's done some analysis on the data that was collected through beep last year. So there was 530,000 cow-calf pairs in this analysis that were collected in 2020's beep. And look, what it showed is, just change the pointer. So if we look here at the difference from the 1-star cows to the 5 stars, we look at the cow weight. So there was 22 kilos of a difference. Your 5-star cows were 22 kilos lighter. So they had the lowest live weight, and obviously that feeds into maintenance. And John was talking there about grass and the cost of feeding animals. If we have lighter cows, they generally cost less to feed. They weaned calves that had a 200-day weight, which were 7 kilos more. So heavier weanlings means more live weight to sell. And this cow-calf weaning percentage, now this might be a new concept to a lot of farmers, but their weaning percentage was 3% higher. So I'll explain the next slide basically what that means. So they weaned the heaviest calves as well and had the highest weaning efficiency percentage. Okay. So those of you that were participating in the BEEP last year and submitted weights, you would have gotten a weaning performance report from ICBF sent out to you just before Christmas. So this is an example of the first page, and what this is telling you is the number of calves born in the period and the number weighed. So all 54 calves were weighed. It gives the average daily gain, and then it breaks it down by males and females. It gives the herd's performance. So what it does as well is it corrects every calf's weight to 200 days. Because you can imagine, the farmer's probably only going to weigh all the calves in one day. They're all going to be different ages, but the only way to compare their performance is to correct them all to the same age. Okay? And the target there for males is that they're 300 kilos at 200 days of age. This herd is at 328, so it's ahead of target. And females at 250, so this herd is well ahead of target, and its females at 306. So very good performance there in that herd. The second page of the report then looks at the cow performance, okay? Because, you know, we need to look at the live weight of our cows as well, because heavier cows cost a lot more to maintain. So in this herd's case, 54 cows calved in a period and 52 were weighed. Average weight was 730, and then it breaks it down by first calvers, second calvers, and third calvers. So this herd's mature cows are up at 802 kilos, which is, you know, they're very large suckler cows, you know. But then this section tells you, well, the cows are heavy, but what are they actually weaning in terms of their own body weight? Okay, so this herd is at 41% on its mature cows. Overall for the herd, it's at 44%. and the target is 42%. Okay, so this graphic just basically explains what weaning efficiency is. You get the calf's weight at 200 days. So in this case, it's 335 kilos. You get the cow's weight in, which is 680, and you express the calf's weight as a percentage of the cow weight. So 335 kilos is 49% of 680. So that cow then has a weaning efficiency percentage of 49%. And that's a metric that's used internationally, you know, in a lot of countries like North America, you know, the USA, Canada, a place like Australia, where they're running very large cow-calf operations, suckler herds. And obviously efficiency at that scale is vitally important. And that's a metric that they'll look at in a lot of cases. What's the cow-calf weaning efficiency percentage? Okay. So just moving on to the indexes and how to use them. So what are the Eurostar indexes? Look, they're a tool for selection to help farmers choose the most profitable animals. They're an estimation of an animal's genetic potential, and they're based on the data that we have on each animal and its relatives. And the more information we have on the animal, the higher the reliability. So older AI bulls that have thousands of progeny on the ground, they're 95+% reliability across all their traits because we have lots and lots of information available on those bulls. So the graphic at the bottom just depicts exactly how the system works. So you have the ancestry data on the animals, any performance data collected on them during their lives, and if the animals are genotyped in, that's added in as well, and that gives you your Eurostar index. So where does it start for an animal? So we have a newborn suckler calf here just on the ground. So what is the first thing we know about that animal, and the only thing? It's the sire and the dam. So when the farmer registers a calf, he has to put in the dam. It's compulsory, you know, when you register calves. And if they're participating in the BDGP scheme, you know, they have to put in the sire as well. And obviously that's vitally important to have the full ancestry on the calves. Where does this index start? So what you do is you get the index, the Eurostar index of the sire and the dam, and you add them together and divide by 2. And that gives you what's called your parent average. So that's the index that a calf starts with. Because the calf is just born, we don't have any performance information on that calf yet. So we have to just assume that it's halfway between its sire and dam. But as that animal gets older, we start to get in what's called phenotypic information or performance data. So here, the first thing we'll find out is the calving difficulty. So was the calf born unassisted? Was it a difficult calving, a very large calf? So obviously that feeds into its index. Docility information comes in. So farmers and BDGP are recording the docility scores on their calves. Weight data is coming in through beep, and even before beep, some herds were weighing all of their cows and calves. Animals that go through Tully. So Tully is the performance test centre that ICBF operates in County Kildare. And in that facility, the feed intake on each animal is recorded. So we know how much dry matter each animal is eating per day and how much performance they're giving back for that dry matter. And then when the animals are slaughtered, we get the carcass data in as well, because we're getting carcass data in probably 95% of cases from factories. And where animals are genotyped, so through BDGP, there's about 300,000 animals being genotyped every year. That feeds into the animals index as well. So what is genomics? Basically, for a farmer, it just helps you to better select the most profitable animals in your system. Traits in our cows, they're going to transmit that to the progeny, and the progeny may not perform as well as we would like. So we should use the replacement index where we're trying to breed females as replacements. Okay. The terminal index then, on the other hand, as you would imagine, not worried about any of the maternal traits. And as you can see from the pie chart, it's predominantly carcass, so carcass weight and conformation. Calving, like whether we're trying to breed animals for slaughter as replacements, calving is important to every system. None of us want difficult calvings. Docility is in there, and feed intake as well. So feed intake is a very interesting trait. It's difficult to record, but the animals that go through Tully, we can record that information on them. And there are huge differences, even within breed, where we're finding that animals in the same pen in Tully, they might be from the same breed, even from the same farm. And there's differences of up to 20% in the amount of feed that they're consuming each day for the same growth rate. And that's hugely significant. So what the terminal index is trying to do is breed efficient, high growth animals for slaughter. And it should be used where all progeny are intended for slaughter. So the one thing I will say is just if you are looking at the terminal index, there are no maternal traits at all in that index. You should only be picking animals on the terminal index where all the progeny are going to be sold off maybe as weanlings, or you're slaughtering all the progeny, males and females. If you want to breed your own replacements, then you have to use the replacement index. And you look within that then to try and get a balance between, you know, the maternal traits of milk and fertility and our carcass traits. Just briefly on the dairy beef index. So what this index is it's it allows dairy farmers to pick the most suitable bulls for use in their herd. Okay, it's only applicable to pedigree beef breeders that are maybe producing bulls for that dairy market. So, you know, a lot of Angus and Hereford breeders in particular will be targeting that dairy market, and it's not applicable to suckler farmers. So if you're a commercial suckler farmer, the dairy beef index is not applicable to you at all. So back to the indexes again. Interpretation, I think, is the key here. Okay, through BDGP, it's been running now since 2015, and most beef farmers will have at least heard of the Eurostar index and the star rating system. But how many of them understand it and what level of understanding is there is highly variable across suckler farmers in the country. Okay, so here we have Farmer Joe again. He's a bull for sale. Oh yeah, he's a 5-star bull. But we need to start asking questions in those situations. Well, what's he 5 stars for? Is it on the replacement index? Is it on the terminal index? Is that within breed or a crossbreed? Okay. Is that in the current evaluation? So I have come across farmers that have bought bulls. They were shown sheets of paper and the evaluations might have been 6, 12, 2 years out of date. And the bull's current figures could be very different to what they were shown on a sheet of paper. So just make sure that you're looking at the current evaluation for that bull. Is he performance recorded? So, you know, we have a program there for pedigree herds at the moment called whole herd performance recording. This is where the farmers are getting all their animals weighed and linear scored at least once a year. And again, like in the slide earlier, the more information you have on animals, the higher the reliability will be on the indexes. So if you're buying bulls from performance recorded herds, those bulls are less likely, it's much less likely that their indexes will fluctuate going forward because there's more data behind their indexes starting off before they ever have progeny themselves. Is the bull genotyped? So that's a huge one, particularly if they're in the scheme. You know, we had problems last year in spring 2019 and 2020 where farmers were buying bulls and the bulls weren't genotyped. They could have been 5-star bull replacement index, and the terminal index is lowish as well. And here is where the problem is. He's extremely difficult calving. And what the overall replacement terminal index do is they look at the profitability, the overall profitability picture of using a particular bull. And while, yes, we will get exceptional cattle, they'll have huge growth rate and great muscling, and obviously they're desirable traits, that's all going to get wiped out by the difficult calvings here. So there's going to be a massive economic cost there. And we all know with difficult calvings, any of us that have suckler cows, they're stressful, they cause labor, there's vets bills, and there's increased mortality as well. You know, difficult calvings cause a lot of problems and a lot of cost on farms, okay? So yeah, as I said, no doubt that he's breeding excellent cattle, but the calving difficulty here is the big problem in that bull, which is why the overall indexes are poor. So just the last slide or two. So just a couple of quick and easy steps when you're applying the index to your own herd. So step one is, you know, like any business, whether you're in finance or whether you're in cattle or selling cars, what are you trying to produce? Like, what's your market? Okay. So as we know, many different systems in Irish suckler farms. Some people are in the weanling market and they're trying to produce maybe export type weanlings. Some are trying to breed replacements. Some are in the bull beef game. Lots and lots of different systems. And it's important that you focus on the index and the traits that are important to your system, okay? No point going out and buying a bull that's strong on the traits that you don't need and poor on the ones that you do need. And like I said earlier, some traits are applicable to all. So I don't think any farmer wants difficult calving. So we should always try and find bulls that, you know, are relatively easy calving. And docility. Look, none of us want to have difficult cattle. And a lot of suckler farmers nowadays are part-time. We don't have time to be, you know, chasing cattle around if we need to get them in on a tight time schedule. So docility is applicable to all as well. So step two, You then look at where your cow herd is weak, okay? So our herd of cows is in place. It's not feasible for us to go on and cull all of our cows and bring in a new herd of cows. So we have to work with what we have. And what you do here is you use the Herd Plus Eurostar report, okay? So here we have an example. So any of you that are signed up to Herd Plus have access to this report. And this is the first page of that report, okay? So what it's telling us is the overall replacement index of this herd is 82 euros and the star rating is 4 stars. So look, it's above average, but we could still improve that a bit. But then it gives a breakdown of the traits. So it gives a breakdown of the 3 kind of key traits. So carcass weight, daughter milk, and calving interval, which is basically fertility. So by looking at the star ratings, we can see this herd is plus 27 for carcass weight, which is exceptionally high. It's plus 2 kilos in milk, which is average, but daughter calving interval in is quite poor at plus 2 days at only 1 star. So straight away, if we were to use a traffic light system, carcass weight is fine. We don't need any more carcass weight there in our cows. We have an amber for replacement index, so we need to improve the overall replacement index. And within that, we need to improve the milk figure a bit more. We could bring that up. And calving interval is where we need a big improvement. So you actually want a negative figure for calving interval because you want to take days off that, okay? So that Eurostar report is excellent for interpreting where your own herds lies on those key traits and helping you to make the decisions on where you want to go then. So how do we bring about genetic improvement in our herds? It's through the sires, okay? So as I said, we have to work with our cow herd, but every couple of years, we're going to be changing our stock bull. And where we're using AI, we can change bulls whenever we want. So it's through our sires that we make genetic improvement to our cows. And what's key here is that your sires should be genetically superior to your cows. So if your cow herd, in the example we were looking at, that herd had a replacement index of 82 euros. If that farmer goes out and buys a stock bull with a replacement index of 80 euros, he's not making any improvement. He should be aiming to buy a bull with as high an index as possible to improve on the figures on his cow herd. If he's trying to get a balance between maternal and beef traits, so he's trying to breed replacements and he wants his male calves to be good performers, it's the replacement index, and you're looking for a balance between the milk and fertility and the carcass traits. If that farmer is selling all the progeny as weanlings or slaughtering them, he's only interested in the terminal index, okay? Farmers using AI, the active bull list is on the ICBF website. It lists all of the AI bulls that are available across all the different companies. It's a very good place to start. Farmers that are interested in stock bulls, there's a stock bull finder as well available on the ICBF website. And all of those stock bulls available are from ICBF performance recorded herds. So I alluded to that earlier. These herds are being linear scored every year. All of their stock are being assessed by an ICBF linear score. And they're being weighed as well. And the benefits of that are more information feeding into the indexes and less chance of the indexes changing later on. So I suppose to go back over the 3 steps, define the system, look at your traits in your cows. So where's your cow herd strong and where's it weak? And improve through our sire selection. So sire selection is what's key. So just to wrap it up and to summarize, record accurate data. So that's critically important. And it's not that difficult a thing to do. Like, I mean, the average suckler cow herd size is about 20 cows. It's not that difficult to make the effort to, record our information as accurately as possible, or docility, or weight data, because if you record it accurately, the information you get back out in the form of reports and the index is going to be much more accurate as well. Use the index, so use it to help you to select the more suitable animals, because there is good information there. And again, if there's accurate data going in, it makes the index more accurate and it'll help you pick the more suitable animals. Just to recap, and use the 3 steps for your herd. So what is my system and what type of animals do I need to produce is step 1. What are the strengths and weaknesses of my cows is step 2. And then I need to select sires to improve where my cows are weak, okay? And the last point I'd make is, look, ask if you're not sure. If you're not sure about the index and interpret, if the person is sure, they for you. It's pretty important to ask the question if you're not sure, and just make sure to your attention. I'll hand back to you, Anthony, and if people forward them away.
That's great. A lot of, but few questions, and I know time is against us, but just maybe go to John. If I the wet weather, that might be possible. So what can the person do? Let's just
Well, what they could do, Anthony. I say just if obviously if they can't do what they do is maybe move on to the next paddock, and then if the weather dries up, maybe after a few days or whatever like that, then if they want to clean up, move them back into the paddock that you moved them out of and finish grazing out and graze it out at that stage when the conditions are better. Because if you just let the cattle try and graze it out of this weather, you just destroy the field, or you have. So the best thing is just move them off it into a fresh paddock there, and let them graze in that. And then when the weather dries up, then maybe after a few days, just move them back into it and graze it and clean it out there, and you have a better chance of cleaning it out then.
Excellent, John. And just your other question there, John. If I decide to go on grazing ground first, where does the silage ground? Where does that fit into getting the spring grazing? When do I graze the silage ground? What stage should I graze that?
Probably, yeah. Probably the best time probably to graze the silage grounds is in the second third of your rotation. So like the first third you do is has to be the grazing ground. Between now and the 17th of March. If you want to get the silage ground grazed, the best time to do that really is between the 17th and the 31st of March. Okay, now. The thing about that is, if you don't think you go look, if you decide to go for silage ground, there's a possibility that maybe the other grazing ground that you might let that go too strong altogether. So what I'd nearly do, if your covers are very high in the graze, I maybe might forget about maybe doing the silage and just focus on cleaning out the pastures and the higher cover paddocks and that you plan for the third rotation, and then maybe just cut the silage a little bit earlier. So that's what I would do. But if your covers in the third rotation are going to be too bad, I decided I do it in the second third between the Patrick's Day and the end of March.
Very good. And just the last question there, Judge, just came in. If no cattle out yet, what would you recommend for the rest of March? So there's no cattle out yet. What would you recommend for the rest of March?
There's no cattle out yet. Well, let's say no. What date it is? The 10th of March.
Yeah.
And we've 35 days. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
Now and the 15th of April. So 35 divided by 35 days, and let's say if you have a 100-acre farm, okay. So 100 divided by 35. So you need to be grazing. Sorry, the wrong one. 100 divided by 35. That's 2.8, 2 3/4 acres today, multiplied by 7. So between now, if the weather settles, I'd say just get about the weekend and just aim to have if you can graze about 20 acres per week. The daily rate, look, you're going to have the daily rate grazing to 2.8 acres per day. We have days like this, it's impossible to stick with that. But if we go by the weekly figure, that is the more suitable. That's the one to really watch.
So allocate a weekly area.
Yes, exactly.
And try to stick to that. Okay.
Yeah, and graze to that figure.
Excellent. Just a couple of questions there for yourself, Chris. Is there any reason why docility makes up so little of the replacement index?
Yeah, it's something we get asked quite a lot. I suppose the first thing I'll point out is, if you remember in the slides I had where I kind of had the pie chart of each of the traits and the indexes. I suppose the first thing I'll say is that if you were to increase the emphasis on docility, then you have to decrease the emphasis on other traits. Because at the end of the day, it has to come to 100%. What we are looking at doing, and there's, I suppose when BDGP finishes, there may be a bit of a review of the indexes, is that at the extremes on docility, particularly at the poor end, that animals will get more penalised at the more extreme end. So, like currently, it's kind of a hard one to explain to farmers, but currently it's a linear calculation that for every unit you increase in docility, it's an extra X amount of euros onto the index. But at the negative end, where an animal is extremely poor on docility, that it's no longer linear, that it starts to fall off a cliff. So at that extreme end, that animal's overall index will be hit a lot more severely on the overall figures. So at the moment you have some animals have very high indexes with a very poor docility figure. Whereas with this change, what it would mean is that animals at that extreme, their overall index figure would be penalised an awful lot more. So then farmers would be obviously less likely to select them. What I will say on top of that, though, is that it comes back to focusing on the traits that we need to focus on for our own systems. Now, docility is probably something that's applicable to all herds, and if it's something that's a problem in your own herd, and you have let's say it's a potential stock bull or an AI bull with a very high overall index, but the docility figure is poor, then you just need to avoid that particular animal, because it's not going to improve your system. It's not going to improve docility for you, and that's something that you want to significantly improve. So again, it's about using the index properly. Okay, the weighting could be higher, but it is where it is at the moment. So just look at the specific trait, and if the trait is poor, then just avoid that bull.
Very good, Chris. Just another one. Why are not all calves genotyped at birth to avoid having to bring the cattle back in for tagging when they're gone out during the summer?
Yeah. Look, I suppose the simple answer there is cost. So, like at the moment, it's the cost of genotyping animals is €22. Now, for herds that are participating in the scheme, it's done through the scheme, so it's not a direct cost to the farmer. No, it's withheld from their payment, but the farmer isn't paying out of their own pocket. But if you think about it, like not all herds are in the BDGP scheme. So like those herds, if they were to genotype their animals, they would be hit with that cost. And the other side of it as well is that, on the dairy side, farmers might have no issue genotyping their heifer calves, but we'll say the bull calves, the value of those bull calves is quite low, and €22 of a cost on top of that might be a difficult enough pill to swallow. Now, over time, the cost of genotyping is always coming down. It's like anything, the more volume you can process, the more the cost comes down. But it is something that we are looking at the moment. So there's a pilot project actually running at the moment where calves are being registered via DNA. There's about 400 herds in that. And it is being run as a pilot to see is it feasible to roll out nationally and to try and iron out various problems. So it is something that's being considered, but cost is probably the one single biggest barrier at the moment, Anthony.
Okay, very good. Just last question, Chris, just on feed efficiency. How does a person know if they're buying a bull that he's good on feed efficiency, and is any breed better than others?
Yeah, so there's a trait within the index called feed intake. Now, if you're looking at a bull sale catalogue, it's not actually a trait, it's on the front page. It's one of the ones in the background. And if you want to look at it, you actually have to search for the animal on the online bull search. So you can do it on the phone. So there's an app that you can type in a bull's tag number, put in the name or AI code. Or on a desktop computer, you can go into the bull search and you can actually look at the feed intake trait as well. So the trait is actually feed intake, okay, and it's measuring kilos of dry matter intake per day. In terms of breed, it's like, which county has the best hurlers. So like on average, Kilkenny, for example, have good hurlers, but not every hurler in Kilkenny, or not every person in Kilkenny is a good hurler,
Dodgy territory.
There's massive variation within breeds, so it's very dangerous to go out and, look, I'm just going to buy all limousines because they're efficient or they're very feed efficient. On average, yes, they are. But if you buy a particularly poor limousine bull, for example, on feed efficiency, then you're not going to make any improvements in feed efficiency. So it's about looking at the index of each individual bull and not buying bulls just because they're an Angus or a Limousin or a Simmental, and because we think, well, they're going to deliver because on average they do deliver on that trait, because they might do that.
Okay. Yeah. Look, thanks very much for that. I know we're running over time, so look, a big thank you to the two presenters there tonight, to John Crowley and to Chris Daly from ICBF. Two very different topics, but breeding and grazing, but both very timely and for this time of the year. I suppose just a few thank yous. Look, thanks to Ian Reardon and so the rest of the Cork West dry stock team that in the background. So thanks, Ian, for that. Secondly, I suppose, look, we can see the numbers that were on there tonight. So, look, thanks so much. The numbers held up all night there, and look, thanks so much, and hope everyone got something out of the night. And look, if you have any queries on tonight's webinar or on in general queries, Teagasc, we're there at the end of the phone. I suppose things are different at the moment, but we're there to answer your queries as they come. I suppose lastly, just as a reminder, look, tonight's webinar was recorded and will be available on the Cork West social media channels from tomorrow. So look, thanks again, and look, continue to farm safely this spring. So thank you and good night.